morning, everyone. I welcome you all to this interactive informative session with Professor Amit Shah, Sethi, and Professor Jitendra Shah. A little introduction about them. Professor Amit is from Electrical Engineering Department of IIT Bombay. He is currently working with PHO, that is Public Health Office, to improve waste management in the campus. Professor Jitendra Shah is a consultant at GISE, that is Geospatial Information Sciences and Engineering Lab in the Computer Science and Engineering Department at IIT Bombay. He is at the forefront of using technology for waste management by targeting the community. Professors, today we would like to overall understand and hear from you about your research experience in the field of waste management. We would also want to understand how proper leadership can change the public and government attitude towards proper waste management. So my first question is for you, Professor Amit. In what ways can we improve the waste management within our campus?
Thank you. So there are many ways in which we can improve it, of course, but there are, we will have to set some targets first. First, we'll have to benchmark where we are, and then we'll have to set some targets. So by benchmarking, we'll have to see how much waste we generate, how much of that is recyclable, how much of that is segregated properly versus how much of it is mixed waste. So that kind of accounting has to take place, and with a bunch of other volunteers, PHO has conducted such a survey, and they have a good sense for the waste that is generated from residential areas and from coastal areas and so forth. The only thing is that survey was conducted during the lockdown period, where the statistics were different than the usual times. So I think there is a need for doing that again now that we have a full-fledged working campus. But then after that only we can set targets that we need to increase the waste that goes into our biogas plants by X%, or the waste that goes into composting by Y%, or the waste that is totally solid waste that can be segregated by recyclers by a certain percent. So, and all that will require a three-pronged approach in my view. The first one is awareness itself. If you ask anyone, any of the students or faculty or staff, they are all educated people here. You ask them, is solid waste management important? They will all say yes. Should we be sending mixed waste to our landfills and our oceans? They will say no. But does it really translate that nugget of awareness? Does it really translate into habit? Many times it doesn't. And so that awareness has to be taken to the next level, where it translates into practice. It translates into behavior change. That is number one. Second is that behavior change becomes easier if you have infrastructure to support it. And by infrastructure to support it means, for example, color-coded bins at regular intervals, so that people don't feel frustrated walking long distances with waste in their hand, and so forth. So it should be easily accessible wherever they have to put the waste and so forth. So that's the second part of it. And then the third part of it is that we also need to have incentives. Without incentives, you are only relying on goodwill of the people, and that only goes a certain distance. To make a more complete behavior change, the incentives have to be aligned, both positive and negative incentives. So I don't know how that would be, perhaps in terms of fines as negative incentives for throwing mixed waste. Positive ways could be friendly competition between wings of a hostel or buildings on campus to do more waste segregation and so forth. So all these things have to come together, but they cannot come together unless there is will from the top and a push from the bottom. So all those have to align together for this to come. Let me give it to Dr. Shah.
Yeah, thank you. While I agree with all of that what he said, I will only add a few things. I think that the behavior change will come only by some kind of a continuous push, and that continuous push requires a good information infrastructure, which constantly keeps you awake as to whether you are what I would call in a green shade or a yellow one or the red one, depending on what is your performance. And if you become performance conscious and you are reminded about it all the time by some data which is actually based on facts, evidence, and hence trustworthy, because If you have that, I think behavior can possibly change. People may build a competition amongst the different wings or the different hostels, as you said. So that is one area that we need to talk about. My only desire is that let IIT not look at it only from within the campus point of view. Let IIT look at itself as an example for the rest of the world, rest of the city to start with. If they can look at it as that, then I think the prestige associated with performing well would be much higher than merely doing it for a hospital. And if that kind of a spirit can be developed, which is what my attempt has been, because we are working with the BMC, that is Mumbai Municipal Corporation, and we would also like to set an example for the rest of the cities. So can IIT be a part of that campaign and use IIT campus as a model, a sample in that context? In that case, large number of youth within IIT can be motivated better. This is my way of looking at it, and this is what I'm attempting. Another thing I do believe is that IIT has a huge amount of talent in terms of interdisciplinary study.
Yes.
So there are many problems that are currently problems because we look at them only from one angle. So if you want, I'll talk about it later, or if you want, I'll continue.
Please continue, sir.
Yeah. So one of the examples that I think I talked to some people, students, we get a lot of Zomato and Swiggy packages. Do we really need all that packaging? Can we do without that packaging? Can we work with reusable utensils which can be returned to the agencies that are really nearby? And we give them incentive saying, look, we'll give you 10 sets to start with, bring stuff only in this, take away the other tiffins that are lying there, okay, and let's keep an account. We have enough digital infrastructure, we'll keep an account of which utensil has gone. If we can do that, we can reduce a large part of utensils that are required for liquid material. And for the other solid material, use pots made of leaves and get, we have IIT as a huge campus which generates so many leaves, give some livelihood to some people to produce the appropriate boxes, okay, out of that, and they are used for all the packaging. Can IIT set an example? That's the way I look at this.
That's a very good way. Actually, it covers, it's setting a system in motion which can be increased on scale, and it can go to a country level as well. So many companies are also coming up with green, like they're reusing utensils and edible utensils also in some parts of Bangalore. So yes, this is somewhere where we can continue.
Yeah, but I would not like to have the fashionable things like edible utensils. They're so costly that they are beyond the reach of the common. So let's create an example and let us stick to nature and use what I remember having eaten all my lunches and dinners in the marriage ceremonies on those pattals.
Yes.
Why not go back to that?
And the dabba walas already are using reusable utensils for their services. But somehow, when we go to these new age foods, we have not kept up with those habits. They have been part of Mumbai's history for a very long time.
Yes. Now another question that would be about solid waste management, which is also a pain point on every level, from a city level to a state level, even on country level, especially in a developing country like ours, India. So can you suggest ways it could be properly managed?
So I think there are some very big issues that we have with why we are not able to do good solid waste management in this country. And part of it has to do with our governance structure itself. And that's it will require a big awareness program and a big push from the bottom to get that change. I'll give you an example. We don't have solid local self-governance. You may, if I ask you who's the mayor of London, you may all know. If I ask you who's the mayor of New York, you may all know. But we don't know who's the mayor of different, the wards of Mumbai or Bangalore and so forth, or Kolkata. That is because our mayors are not powerful at all. So mayors are the people we elect to manage our cities, and they are the ones who will be basically managing or overseeing the management of traffic, overseeing the construction of metros in a city that is well functioning, and they will be answerable for the waste management. Now, who's answerable in our country? It's the municipal commissioner, who's an IAS officer, and their job is secure. If they don't do a good job, no one can threaten their job. We are lucky if we do get a municipal commissioner who's efficient and who cares and who actually makes sweeping changes to the city, and then we get cities that are that get awards that suddenly it became the cleanest city in Asia. But that model cannot be replicated unless the incentives are aligned. So for municipal commissioners, there is no incentive other than their own goodwill or their own ambition to do good for the city. And the other elected officials that we have are chief ministers, but their vote comes not just from a single city but from the entire state. So they have to worry about their next election. They have to worry about the real voters who are in outside the cities and so forth. So cities don't get a priority because of that. That's why we don't have a single world-class city. The only city that somewhat functions is Delhi, is because it's a city-state. So the power to some extent lies with the chief minister, and they are only answerable for that urban area. We don't have that in Mumbai, we don't have that in Bangalore, we don't have that in Kolkata, we don't have that in Hyderabad, anywhere. So that's why these incentives have to come together. Now that's a very big fight, right? So that cuts across not just solid waste management, but also stalled metro constructions, road quality, traffic management, everything. Crime, urban crime, etc. It cuts across all of those things. Urban education, public education for people who cannot afford to send their kids to private schools. So it cuts across all those things. But then once if we say that let's ignore the elephant in the room, which is this problem, let's talk about what we can do at our level. Then of course we can suggest a number of technologies that can help make waste management easier, segregation easier, management of the bin is full schedule, the pickup, etc. easier. Those things we can get it done, but it requires political will. So let me not get too much into this. Let me hear from Dr. Shah.
Professor Jitendra, I would also like to discuss with all how recently National Green Tribunal, that is NGT, has penalized Maharashtra government by a sum of 12,000 crores as environmental compensation for allegedly not managing solid and liquid waste, causing harm to the environment. Can you shed some light on why the richest state of India, that is Maharashtra, not being able to satisfy the national standard for solid waste management? Continuing from what Professor Shah.
Yeah, I don't know if it is appropriate, but can I ask from the audience what is their estimate of what is the expenditure of a BMC, municipal corporation, for the whole city on solid waste management? What is the annual expenditure? Is there anyone who can guess?
100 of crore.
100 crores. Too small? Is there anyone else? Okay, I'll not take too much time. Let me say it's 4,500 crores. That is being spent all the time. The question is, where is the money going? It's going in the direction that the NGT doesn't recognize the right thing. And what is that? Transport. All the money goes, most of the money goes, all the people engage, 27,000 people, not a small number. 27,000 people work towards transporting the waste from one place to another. And it is a mixed waste. Now tell me, what is the incentive to these people? Their incentive is more the less the better. Why would they want to reduce it? And therefore, if NGT says you have not done anything to reduce the waste, they are right. So we have structural problem in incentivizing increase of waste rather than reducing waste. If you want to change that, my belief is that we need to have a system wherein the community which is affected is informed about what exactly is happening and can have a say in it. That is something that I believe requires a good dynamic information system which is understandable by all the layers of the society. And that's where I typically come in saying GIS, Geographical Information System, with color coded map, with every wing being given a color, with every complex being given a color, or every ward being given a color based on the performance. If you can create some such system of information which informs people based on the information that they know, then they can try and see that the authorities act accordingly. So long as the municipal corporation is required to give data to the central government in one way or the other without any measure of authenticity or trustworthiness, and so long as the central government keeps accepting that, and so long as they keep funding, why should it change? So the idea is, let people have the kind of actionable information in an understandable way from a geographical, let's say, hierarchy from bottom to top. That will change things. And until then, it won't change.
Yes, this platform of community GIS that you just shared. So this is how it also informs the community into getting the questions right. That this is what we want and how are you doing it, and they also are able to look through how much of it is being done. So this how the community can further the role from there, not just checking it, not just but also trying to contribute in it. Is that a core actor or a peripheral role?
Absolutely. It's a very core asset, a core aspect. The fact of the matter is, as of today, no municipal corporation, including the ones which are awarded, have checked that as the best cities, they have no data. Without data, they can keep creating indices. Okay, this is estimate. Now that's not good. But this data cannot be created unless the community participates. And the community will not participate if they believe that whatever we do is not going to really affect, is not going to happen the way it is. I'll give you an example. I was actually addressing a class yesterday in a posh school, and I asked them, "What do you segregate?" They said, "Yes, we all segregate." At least 80% of the people said, "Yes, we segregate." And my mother is very particular about it, and we fight with our bedside, but make sure we segregate. And I said, "What happens to that later?" So yes, we're going to the right place. But then one girl stood up and said, "No, it so happens that when we segregate, by the time it goes to the gate, it is mixed into the same truck."
Right. Yes.
So what is the point? So the point is, there is no incentive for people to create the segregation and really make use of it. Okay, because the system that the corporations have is different from what is there in, say, a place like Indore or a few places where they do have a very meticulous segregation. So over here in Mumbai, they are not doing that segregation. In some of the smaller towns, they are doing it in Maharashtra because the vested interests are not that powerful. The commissioner or whatever municipal officer is able to implement the system, but in Mumbai, that is not the case.
So as we go on a level that high, like we see that how city is not really contributing well. So what can we? How does waste management affect the economy overall?
So, I mean, without waste management, there are obviously a lot of adverse impact on the economy. Like urban pollution is a big issue, whether it is water, whether it is air, whether it is landfills and people who have to work on the landfills and so forth. So that is a big issue, and that creates a lot of externalities on health of people that adversely affects the economy. For example, we all know the recent floods that have happened in several cities in India because of heavy rains, and part of it is because of obviously over construction without flouting all the zoning laws and so forth, but also because of all the blockage of the sewer lines and so forth due to lack of waste management. So the sewer lines are not as efficiently working as they could be as per their capacity. So that creates so much of that stagnant water that spreads diseases and so forth, and also brings the city to a standstill. So there's a big economic impact of that. And some of the economic impact we cannot even assess right now. So for example, all these microplastics that are coming back through agriculture, coming back through seafood and so forth into our body, what disease they will create in the future, we don't know. It's not, we just started discovering microplastics inside human cells.
Yes.
We don't know what the impact of that microplastic is yet. So will it shorten the lifespan? Will it impair cognitive ability? Will all those things we don't know yet. So there could be a very large, even larger economic impact on people due to lack of proper solid waste management. On the other hand, if everyone does their bit, let's say we start doing segregation at source at 80-90% of the people start doing that, and it is picked up as separate waste and it is given to the recyclers, then the recyclers also have an incentive to do the recycling because they don't have to spend the money for the segregation.
Yes.
Otherwise, the cost of building all these fancy recycled stuff, for many of the things, even in Germany, it's not cost effective. They have not broken a profit, although they have been doing it for 2 decades and so on. So, if we want all this waste to go circle back into the economy in an economically efficient manner, then waste management has to be thinking that is part of our civic duty in some sense, and also part of the what we expect from the governance to give us, and us giving the work at the grassroots, and they're giving us the infrastructure to do it from the top. So with that, we can have less dependence on foreign oil for plastics, less dependence on mining fossil fuels, less dependence on buying rare earth elements and so forth if we do electronic recycling. So a lot of that will be a virtuous cycle that will feed into the economy. And perhaps experts like Dr. Shah can add more specifics to that, but that's my overall view.